Hello there, good evening and welcome to another edition of Business Focus here on TV3 with me, Michael Obudu. Coming up tonight, Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirms exports to the United States under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, has been affected by a 10% tariff introduced by President Trump. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to Ghana, Virginia Palmer, expresses optimism about trade ties between both countries. And later in the bulletin, UK wants a stronger and more strategic partnership with Ghana amid all of these trade wars currently ongoing globally. This is Business Focus here on TV3, and Business Focus is sponsored by EcoBank. So before we bring you the details of our headlines, we'll bring you updates on the T-bills market and bring you up to speed with how the Treasury market has been performing. We'll be bringing you updates and interviews from the Federation from FAGE, and also we'll be talking to a trade expert on what all of these dynamics really mean for Ghana as a country with this new tariff that has come from the US. But first, Ghana's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has confirmed that exports to the United States under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, have been affected by 10% tariff introduced administration, specifically but the United States and its partners. Now, speaking during the meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Palmer noted that while some Ghanaian exports, such as oil, gas, and energy-related products continue to benefit from preferential treatment, others have been impacted by the tariff. Now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said it would continue to collaborate with the Ministry of Trade, Agribusiness, and Industry to engage U.S. authorities on ways to lessen the impact of the tariff on Ghanaian businesses and the wider economy. And we must note that this particular meeting happened a few hours ago at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But just to walk you through our guest for tonight, we'll be speaking to Louis Yao Afo. He is an international trade and investment promotion expert from the AFTA network. And we also have Davis Kobo. He is president for the Federation of Associations of Ghanaian Exporters, FAGE, to pick their perspectives on this latest updates with the tariffs and then bring you up to speed with what they think should be the way forward with this particular policy. With the US for third quarter of 2024, the total trade between both countries was 145.7 billion cedis, with 74.8 billion cedis representing exports and 70.9 billion cedis standing for Ghana's imports from the US, leading to a trade surplus of 3.9 billion. Gold contributed for 3/5 of the total exports from Ghana to the US. And some of the things that we'll be talking about really. And it also buttresses the reason why the Trump administration is basically implementing this tariff, because according to them, from the numbers that we just showed you right now, it means that Ghana exports more to the US than it actually imports from the country. We'll go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll delve into the nitty-gritties of the conversation for today. Keep your dial locked here on TV3. My name is Michael Obudu, and this is Business Focus. Welcome back. This is Business Focus here on TV3 with me, Michael Obodu. So today on the show, we are exploring the impact of the Trump administration's 10% tariffs on exports from countries like Ghana into the U.S. We'll be looking at some of the numbers and what they mean and the reason behind this decision. So from the total trade between Ghana and the U.S., you see that $2.14 billion worth of trade happened in 2024. Out of this, the imports were 967.3 billion and the exports were 1.17 billion, explaining that Ghana exports more to the US than it actually imports into the country, which is part of the reason why the Trump administration is implementing these tariffs in order to sort of balance off the differences there and also protect their interest. An argument that some people think that countries like Ghana should begin to lean towards. These are some of the things that we export to the United States: mineral fuels, oils, distillation products. It's interesting that the mineral fuels are some of the things that, according to this new directive, have been exempted from the 10% tariff. However, the rest, like cocoa and cocoa preparations, articles of apparel, knits or crocheted, will go through this 10% tariff. Lead, oilseed, oleagric fruits, grains, seeds, and fruits, all of these will be impacted by this new directive. If you look at the numbers, this is over $300 million worth of trade that will be impacted by the 10% tariff that will be introduced. So technically, that will be an additional $30 million, literally, to be able to continue that particular trade. But then we've been speaking to some industry people. Financial economist Dr. Eric Boakye-Iyadom, according to him, he has allayed concerns over the 10% tariff imposed by the Trump administration on Ghanaian exports in the U.S. And this is what he had to say.
The U.S. charging 10% on Ghana's product obviously will make product exported from Ghana to the U.S. a bit expensive and in a way contract the market from Ghana. But as a country, it will not so much affect us. Last year, if we look at the total volume of trade, the U.S. export to U.S. was around 967 million Ghana cedis, whereas we imported goods worth about 1.17 billion. So the trade between Ghana and U.S. favors the U.S. more than us. And if we look at the total volume of export as a country, the trade export from Ghana to U.S. constitute about 0.3%, less than 1%. So in the grand scheme of our international trade, it does not so much affect us. Our major trading partners, especially as in where we export more, is the UAE, Switzerland, and South Africa. So if this tariff will contract the market in the US, it is time that we look elsewhere. And it also calls for taking advantage of the AFTA and export more to neighboring countries. And you will ask us, what do we export? We basically export primary product. Is it the case that we can also look at adding value, in terms of our gold, our cocoa, and oil that we export? If we can add value, then it means that some of these countries will look at buying refined products or value-added product from us, which will make us benefit in the global trade. Last year, we did so well. We recorded some trade surpluses. And I think that if we can add value, we will stand to benefit more in terms of our international trade engagement.
So that was Dr. Eric Boakye-Iyadom. He's a financial economist, and according to him, the total volume of the U.S. trade in the scheme of things when it comes to the exports from Ghana is under 1%, just about 0.3%. And interestingly, most of what we export to the U.S. in itself are in raw state. So why not add value and consider other markets and make more revenue from there? We've also spoken to the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana, Samson Asake Awengobet, and he's calling for more diplomatic engagement on this particular issue to bring some finality to the matter.
I remember President Mahmoud time, we asked for them to come and set up their military base in Ghana. We have not asked their military base to close down, isn't it? So there are so many things that we can also. Their embassy is here. They're enjoying even more than Ghanaians who are here, isn't it? And so I strongly believe that it's not up to the time that we say we'll retaliate. Let's use the diplomacy.
So that was Samson Asake Awingobit, the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. He thinks diplomacy is the way to go. But let me bring you now in studio to my guest, Davis Kobo. He is the President of the Federation of Associations of Ghanaian Exporters Feeds. I also have Louis Afo. He's an international trade and investment promotion expert for the APN Group. Davis, I'll start with you. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time, first of all. So take us back a bit. Before this whole directive from the Trump administration, we had the AGOA policy in place. How was that particular policy? What has been the experience since it started?
Okay, so thank you very much, and let me say good evening to your cherished viewers. Yes, AGOA has been existing for some time now, which of course exporters were taking advantage. 10% tariff is becoming, for now, it's a whole news for us, because we're taking advantage of the free tariffs to be able to penetrate the market. And we saw traction between 2020 onwards. We started seeing a lot of tractions where we're exporting a lot, especially, let's take it out, for instance, 2023 alone, they did 54 million USD.
To the US?
Yes, which is not bad. Currently, we are 52 million USD. Currently, we are leading exporters of yam to the US. Second by Jamaica, that was doing just around 51 point something million USD. So that tells you, and we, of course, we are doing apparel, garments, and other things. So that tells you that the free tariffs basically was giving us some sort of money in terms of foreign exchange. So coming back just a day, waking up to hear that 10% is being imposed on us, I think for us it's something that it's unacceptable. Even though it's no, for me, it didn't come as a shock, because if you look at the whole Trump administration and things unfolding where, for instance, the exporters, I remember somewhere February, under the USAID project, they were sponsoring some of the exporters to full logistical. All of it, they bought them tickets and other things. All of a sudden, they would do the tickets. Just 2 days before they had to leave. I had to go and negotiate with USAID. Nothing worked out. So what I did was to ask the exporters to rather pay for the same ticket. They maintained the ticket, because at the time, the ticket rates, if we were going to buy, was going to be high. So we did. Then all of a sudden, so it didn't come as a shock. But for me, if you have an agreement with somebody, unilaterally, the person couldn't wake up one day to say that I've cancelled it. At least there should be some sort of conversation or discussion. And that's the more reason why I think that, and I said it this morning on Joy FM, that look, there's a need for us to engage the U.S. Embassy here. And I'm happy Honorable Okujeto Abrakwa did just say. I think I listened to Awingobit, who is a very good friend, and it's true, because we have the U.S. base here, and apparently they enjoy a couple of things. So we also wake up and say one day that, look, you pack your things and leave. And I think that when that happens, you have trade war. That's not what we are looking for. But we also think that Ghana is a sovereign country, and in as much as we also have our laws, so you don't just wake up and do things the way you want. We could also decide that, look, this is how we want to do it. And so I think that for now, we just wait and see. But it's my hope and believe that even though we know a sports mark, we don't do a lot of business there. I think the difficulty here is the way and manner the thing was done is what, for me, is unacceptable. And we should face it. It's unacceptable. Nobody should be afraid to say it.
And it's quite surprising that this is coming at a time where the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, the AGOA Act, was actually supposed to expire sometime in the middle of this year.
Exactly.
And this new directive literally crashes this.
Exactly. So, and that's exactly what I was saying. So they didn't even wait for it to expire for us to, to say, no, let's renegotiate. But then crash it just in the middle of the road, I don't think is the best. I don't think it's the best. And I think for me, it's going to, in as much as the impact is not going to be huge. But then at the same time, currently, if you look at the medium term, it is, because we have others who have signed contracts, who have their things on vessel enter the US, and of course, it takes effect. It's instant effect. So what happens is, 10%, is it that your buyer is going to absorb? I've made some checks. We're talking with a couple of buyers, and they are not ready to absorb that 10%. They felt, look, why don't we absorb it? But then let's even look at the agricultural products. The producer gets just about between 12 to 15% margin. Then the aggregator, who is the exporter, to be specific, gets just about 5%. So if you are asking the person to absorb 10%, then what they are telling the person, if I went to the bank to borrow, it means the bank will definitely have to come after me. And I think that these are some of the things we need to look at. For me, I think that this is not child's play. We need to face it on as government and see how best we handle it.
It's quite concerning that the policy didn't make room for already existing contracts even prior to its coming to being.
No.
Very sad one there. Louis, you are with the After Policy Network, and I know your bias or affinity towards the AFCFTA, but I'll pick your initial thoughts really on this particular move by Trump.
Thank you. Good evening to your viewers. It's not really AFCFTA trade. For me, it's a blessing in disguise.
A blessing in disguise?
Yes. It's a blessing in disguise.
And you agree?
Yes.
It's a blessing in disguise for Africa. I think that African leaders ought to really learn a lot of things. We need to own our own agenda. Donald Trump, I started following his trajectory right from last year. In fact, during his first term, he adopted a similar approach, but it was targeted to China and the WTO. And at that time, a lot of US companies suffered. But what he did was that they gave aids to most US companies. So the world didn't hear much. Now, if you listen to his inauguration, he made it clear. He said, the golden age of business. And he stated clearly that pump, baby, pump. You recall? So what he wanted to do was that he decided to move the US strategic reserves, this time to really mine the oil, because he had an agenda where he was going to depend less on the world and decided to boost US production. So I started feeling that second. Then around November, October, I had the opportunity to meet most of them when they came. He sent US special trade officials, some from USTR, some from State Department, to communicate the US policy, Trump's incoming policies to most African governments through the embassies. But most didn't take it as it was coming. And I had about 45-minute interaction with some of these officials. And it was purely trade issues, change. Now, if that's just, as a blessing in disguise, because at the end of the day, it is tariffs is connected to more of US stock and markets than we. Ours is connected more to agribusinesses and what have you. So they actually, it's their market that is slumping in one way or the other. However, and in any case, it is somebody's trade policy. You can't turn his hand to wind back. It is his trade policy. And so you have to also have your trade policy. Now, in this case, most of the countries had 10% slab. Apart from South Africa, who had almost exceeded about 50 to 30, kind of.
And China about 30.
No, I'm talking about Africans. Okay. Half of the other jurisdictions, they are different game altogether. And you could see WTO is helpless. Because this is a trade policy of a country. And you see, I said it's a blessing in disguise because it is to make, the spiritual effect is that, like my brother said, at the end of the day, what are tariffs? It's tax on export. So at the end of the day, your cost is what is going to go high. During the first tenure of Trump's office, when he did the same, the agri sector suffered because the U.S. exported about close to 70% of the agri products to China, Mexico, and then Canada. That was what happened. And this time around, they even started, and they survived it because, as I said, they gave 8. This time around, the shocks have been so early because at the end of the day, what is going to happen is that it's going to affect consumers too. At the end of the, apart from affecting consumers, it's also going to affect the value chain. Yeah. Because I always say that when you are talking about export, it's not the final exporter you look at. You look at the value chain from the source, the middle people, the logistics, all the value chain is going to affect it. So my initial comment is that it's a blessing in disguise for our economies to wake up. It's a blessing in disguise for us. You can't negotiate. Because this is, in fact, I listened to the U.S. ambassador when she was saying, you could see that she couldn't say much.
Yeah.
She couldn't say much because this is not something she can do anything about it. All she said was that a lot of commodities were off target, like gold, and I passed a comment somewhere that why was gold, why was oil and things off? Because this is an inelastic commodity that they really need. So like my brother said, it is about time we look at our value additions, improve upon our value additions. I'm not talking about after yet, but this is my initial comment. There's a blessing in disguise, and for us to wake up. Because Trump won't change his mind today, and he's not changing his mind tomorrow. Before he took this initiative, he had already prepared the buffer stock. He has prepared his buffer stock. I said it to these people. He said, you will suffer for a little bit.
But it'll pay off in the long run.
It'll pay off in the long run. So, and you could realize that the basis of the calculation of the trade, the tariff reciprocal one, is based upon you also the calculation, your deficit, his surplus, and then divided by 2. And to the extent that he was able to tariff Antarctica, where the penguins are. And mind you, the team that advised Trump is not just mean team, it's his economic, what we will call our economic management team, who factored a lot of things together. So I think that it's a wake-up call for African leaders. It's a wake-up call for our leaders to really understand that this time round, the world is not going backwards or stagnating to wait for anybody. It is who the late Nelson Mandela said something. They said, look, we are not asking for trade support. We're asking for fair trade. Yeah. And you can only command fair trade when the value of your product commands higher price.
Interesting. Mr. Kobo, I'll come to you shortly on your take on this because you also agree that it's a blessing in disguise. I'll just take a look at the numbers quickly. You see that the total imports from the U.S. is 70.9 billion. With the trade, if the trade tariff, and then the exports is what? The exports is 74. So when that 10% is implemented, it means that our exports will go up to say 77.
Yes.
Which will now turn our surplus to a deficit. So this is basically Trump looking out for his country. You say it's a blessing in disguise too. How do you mean in this context? Especially when your members are going to take a pinch.
Again, so let me also borrow from President Trump. Our members are going to suffer for a while, but then at the end it's going to pay off. Why am I saying this? My major problem now is for those who have their things going, because everybody was working towards the expiration of the agreement. So I know very well that most of the people who signed contracts knew and were maybe sensing that the contract might not be, the agreement might not be renewed. So they were targeting the next 3 months, and then all of a sudden this happened. And that has been my biggest challenge and problem. But on the long term, let me talk about after alone, the GDP is 3.4 trillion. So it means that if we should really position ourselves well and add value to most of our things, we become a hub for us to be able to export to most of these after countries. And once that happens, then it means that we have our own money within the same continent. You understand me? And you don't get people just wake up and tell you what they want, because it's a win-win affair. As against this, where somebody feels superior than the other. One other problem I think we should be looking at is the logistics within AFTA. Because, for instance, if you are sending something from here to Kenya, recently I am aware that when you go to Kenya, the Ghana Export Promotion Authority have this impact
Export house.
House there. It takes 60 days for them to go by sea. It just go all the way to Europe before they send it. Do you understand me? Meanwhile, the things are hockey. Exactly. The things are hockey. It gets there and almost everything is gone. The demand for Ghanaian products over there is very high. But the issue is how do you get it there? Because if you are doing fresh mangoes, for instance, there's still for reefer container, you need maximum of 24 days. Anything exceeding that, you have issues. The yams and other things. So if you are doing 60 days, the thing go all the way to Europe before they send it, it becomes a problem. Nigeria, it just closed. We can also intertrade. I mean, they demand a lot of things from us. So if we have good logistics, recently I got orders for somebody to ship from somebody in Sierra Leone to ship some things to them. And but we are not even getting, how do you call it, any vessel.
Yeah, I mean,
direct vessel. Yeah. So these are some of the things I think I agree with my brother to say blessing in disguise, because we could build our own, how to call it, market with the trade with the after. Because you see, for me, I think for us to sit for the Western to decide on our export points is neither here nor there. You understand me? So
our own products.
Our own products. Whilst we have, after that is demanding 3.5 trillion GDP. You understand me? So how much do we get out of this? If we could do even 1/4 of that, it solves major problems in Ghana. So that's my major concern here. And this is the more reason why I think that this 24-hour economy and other things should come to play very well, where we add value to most of the things we are producing, so that it doesn't really mean that we are just exporting fresh. Because as it stands now, the fresh things, if you look at the agricultural products, I made mention of 54 million yam. Yam goes as fresh. You understand me? But then now we have the yam, flour, and nothing. If we could add value, gluten-free, it goes there, and it is high in demand. You understand me? So we can take advantage of the current situation to be able to build our own network, look for alternate markets to penetrate. China is there. I think anything, currently, I know that they are even buying pigs from here. So we could do, they are buying pigs from here. So it's not just about the Western market alone, the Western trade alone. Kind of. I think if our exports become over dependency on the Western countries, I think we'll have issues. And that is the more reason why I 100% agree with it's a blessing in disguise. We need to work towards it. We don't have to allow what happened, that somebody wakes up a day and say, look, I'm slashing the 10%. Yes.
Lewis has been heavy on this whole after and investment in logistics. But what you just said right now, that there's a demand for vessels that would work within the West Coast. So from what you are saying now, where people are looking for where to put their monies, government is rejecting T-bills. So you are saying, the Page is saying on authority that if you are an investor in Ghana, one place you can look is to invest in ships that would work on the coast. And you as Page are ready to bring the demand.
Exactly.
I mean, I agree with him. You look at the figures that you just... You see, one thing we have to look at is when you are dealing with tariffs, what Trump wants to do is this, and that is one of the things that we have to look in context. His focus is to make sure that most of the companies in the U.S. produce home base. Trump's focus is companies in the U.S. should start producing. He is putting together his factor productivity.
That's right.
He realized that, you see, every economy reaches a certain primary stage, you move to secondary stage, you move to the tertiary level, the service stage. From 2008 along the line, the U.S. reached the service stage where they felt that they have overproduced and they were okay. So then what happened was that manufacturing sector and other things were moved out of U.S. Now, they have reached a point after 2008, the Great Recession. What they realized was that most of their productive capacity were outside the U.S. So they were more important. So what Trump, this agenda is to make America great again by bringing back most U.S. companies to come and produce on U.S. soil. Again, That's why they have a program they call the US Select currently.
Okay.
What the US Select program is for targeting is that they are targeting investors from all over the world to come and invest in the US, a threshold of $1 million. And we have companies like Niche Cocoa who have taken advantage. We have A1 Bread. Is it A1 or something?
Yes, A1
Who
Bread.
have taken advantage. And I think there's a third company. Now, what I'm saying is that if you want to build the approach that Trump is having, we must create a lower tariff regime. Meaning that Ghana, if the Ministry of Trade is listening to me, they should rather focus on creating a lower tariff regime. It is similar to what we are having today as free zones. Currently, the special economic zones law is not yet ready. They should speed up the special economic zones, because when you create a lower tariff regime, you encourage investors. So to him, Trump, he's creating a lower tariff regime, even though he's slapped outside. If, in the context of ASCFTA, we need to look, as ASCFTA doesn't have external tariffs. We don't operate as external tariff. That's why the ASCFTA cannot, member states cannot come together as one to say that we are going to negotiate as a block. We are not operating external tariffs.
But that's also problematic, because we've seen what the EU is doing.
Because
and yet Africa has decided to engage with the US on an individual basis. And that's been part of the problem. And I'm sure you agree with that, because if we began to aggregate and negotiate based on the aggregation, it gives us a better leverage rather than what we are doing now in small.
See, the problem is that the ASCFTA was built upon the concept of one African market. And one African market, you have not reached there yet. You are on the first phase, which is free trade. And after the free trade, you have customs, external customs. Then you move to one currency. Then you reach the peak. When you reach the peak of one African market, that is the prototype we have like European Union.
Okay.
Where then one currency, free movement, and all that. We have not reached there yet at all. So where we are going to have challenges of the first phase, which is the free trade. And at the free trade, we are not external tariff approach. Because even among the countries of ASCFTA, each country or region went with categories of product or concessions. Yes, and West Africa went about 5,000 products. Seychelles and Egypt went alone. How then can they go aggregate now as a bloc to go and negotiate with the US? That is one of the big blow. Secondly, one of the approaches that we have to look at, like I've talked about the special economic zones. If the 24-hour economy can be built upon the prototype of special economic zones. In fact, I kept saying that, look, the previous administration policy of one district, one farm was a fantastic prototype policy that ASCFTA can build on. Why? Because the one district, one factory was built on revolutionizing industrialization. It was built upon putting together factor productivity. So, for example, instead of the old system of the free zones, this time around you can give opportunity for people to be closer to their resources and so give them the nod to operate with the freedom.
Louis, you hold your horses. I know you're very passionate about this subject, and I'm enjoying the energy. So every day people face different emergencies: police emergency, fire emergency, medical emergency, you name it. Now, but many Ghanaians don't know their emergency numbers. Well, there's one you would want to remember, and that's *770#. Yes, *770#. It's the new EcoBank money emergency number. *770# gives you instant access to loans, fund transfers, utility payments, airtime and data purchases, and so much more, even without data. So there's no need to panic when you find yourself in any money emergency. EcoBank will always come to your rescue. So dial *770# now for solutions to your money emergencies. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. And I hope FAGE members who are watching, they need emergency numbers, they can dial *770#. But then let's take a look at some of the things that we export to the US. So you both would walk us through where you think we can divert these things to if dealing with the US becomes much of a challenge. So if you can put up that slide for us, basically on the things that we export to the US, we saw some things like apparels. We saw also things like, what was it? There was gold, there was apparels, there was oil, there was, I think, processed cocoa. partly processed cocoa and the like. So
cocoa powder,
yeah,
beans.
so we'll put up that slide on the screen for you, and then Mr. Kobo and Lewis, you walk us through. So mineral fuels, oils, distillation products. Assuming the U.S. tariff war continues, where can we divert this, especially under AFTA? Because you were saying we should look inwards now. Where could we send this?
Yes, basically, if I say look inwards, what I mean is that basically you have to create, Ghana needs to focus on an alternative trade pattern.
Yeah.
I repeat, we need to focus on an alternative trade pattern. And the trade pattern is looking at the markets. And what we need to do is that I did a comprehensive studies on the 55 countries of AFTA, and that focused on export and import.
Yeah.
We need to look at the export and import comparative advantages of all these 54 states, and then engage in these guided trade initiatives. Guided trade initiatives where we can say that, look, 13 countries can come together at a certain point and period of time and list these commodities or these products and then begin to trade among themselves over a period of time.
Yeah.
Secondly, we need to establish trade houses. Like Ghana has one in Kenya. Currently, the China malls you see is an example of a trade house. We need to build more trade houses within all member states.
Okay.
So that some of these products, for example, I know that in Ethiopia, they are really interested in aluminium products, especially these silver pans, we don't know, and leather. Currently, cocoa, when you talk about cocoa, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire has a bargaining power where they say, look, let us have a JV whereby we are going to control the prices in a way and also build factories and try to build value addition so that we can have control over the revenue when it comes to chocolate. So I think that these approaches, we should adopt alternative market patterns. This is where we are now. Begin to adopt that pattern, which market is ready for our available products.
Okay. Mr. Kobo, your final takes on the way forward, and maybe if you want to touch on where to export these things that we're looking at.
I think for me, let's even talk about cocoa. Cocoa, the market is everywhere. So that's one thing we have to. When you talk about gold, it's almost the same. It's not just about United States. I mean, the whole world needs gold. And where China, for instance, if you have gold today, they will be more than ready to. And that's the more reason why the Galamsey is thriving in Ghana. If you talk about the rest of the agricultural oilseeds and others, everywhere in the world, I think, again, because like I said, within AFTA itself, if we are trading among ourselves, there will be surplus somewhere, demand at other areas and others. So that is it. It's
so what is the challenge really for your members to do this? If it is that simple, like you put it, what really is the challenge?
I think
export finance.
Exactly. That's what I don't know. I think it's export finance. That is the because you see, normally you sign contracts and for instance, Fage were in full logistics this year, and I tell you what, the deal they brought in March alone, February was $168 million, 3 days fair, $168 million. So the question here, are they able to produce to meet the market? The answer here is no, because they don't have the produce.
All right.
You understand? Export finance is becoming a problem, a challenge. This is where I think that I still want to borrow what my brother said. It's a blessing in disguise for the country, our country, to look inwardly to see what we can do to make sure that we project export. You understand? Than our dependency on the Western countries.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. So that was David Kobo. He's the president of Federation of Associations of Ghanaian Exporters, FAGE. Lewis Yao Afo is International Trade and Investment Promotion Expert, APN Group. And on Facebook, Na Obone Ashon says, America's decision sends a simple message: grow your own, use your own, offer greater quality of goods. Finish. Lucrative Nuna CK says, more fire. Keep your comments coming on Facebook and we'll read them out for you. But remember that every day people face difficult emergencies, different emergencies, police emergency, fire emergency, medical emergency, you name it. But many Ghanaians don't know their emergency numbers. Well, here's one you would want to remember. That's *770#. Yes, *770# is the new EcoBank money emergency number. *770# gives you instant access to loans, fund transfers, utility payments, airtime and data purchases, and so much more, even without data. So there's no need to panic when you find yourself in any money emergency. All you have to do is to dial *770# and EcoBank will always come to your rescue. Dial star 770 hash now for solutions to your money emergencies. And remember that EcoBank is the Pan-African Bank. You are still watching Business Focus here on TV3. My name is Michael Obudu. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you more. Stay tuned.
Every day.
Welcome back. This is Business Focus here on TV3 with me, Michael Obudu. I know that Business Focus is sponsored proudly by EcoBank. Now remember that every day people face different emergencies: police emergency, fire emergency, medical emergency, you name it. But many Ghanaians don't know their emergency numbers. Well, here is one you would want to remember, and that's star 770 hash. Yes, star 770 hash. It's the new EcoBank money emergency number. Star 770 hash gives you instant access to loans, fund transfers, utility payments, airtime and data purchases, and so much more, even without data. So there's no need to panic when you find yourself in any money emergency. EcoBank will always come to your rescue. Dial star 770 hash now for solutions to your money emergencies. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank, and proud sponsors of Business Focus here on TV3. Now we're bringing you an interview we had with the UK trade envoy. Now, you know that Ghana's finance minister recently met with the UK trade envoy to Ghana, Bell Ribeiro Adi, to accelerate a trade deal, stressing that Ghana needs UK support to move stalled projects forward. But what does Ghana stand to gain? We had the opportunity to speak to Bell Ribeiro Adi, and we'll be bringing you that video shortly. We have with us today the UK envoy to Ghana, Bell Ribeiro Adi, to speak to us about the Ghana-UK conversation and the trade between both countries. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I understand you do have some Ghanaian heritage in there?
Yes. My mum and my dad are both Ghanaian. We're Ghans from Accra.
Okay, interesting. So tell us about your role as UK envoy to Ghana.
Well, as well as being the UK Ghana Trade Envoy, I'm also chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Ghana, and that is a cross-party group which actually looks at a variety of issues, mainly strengthening the relations, but also the British Ghanaian diaspora. So I act in that role as well. But as the UK's trade envoy to Ghana, it is my job to promote trade from the UK into Ghana, and from actually Ghana into the UK. If there are any products that we need, promoting it back that way as well. The main focus of my role at the moment is actually to try and promote the economic partnership agreement that we have. You know, in this age of Trump raising tariffs, we actually have tariff-free trade between the UK and Ghana, specifically with the UK being allowed to bring in infrastructural, electronic and machinery products, and for Ghana, for agricultural and textile products. Interesting. So we understand Ghana is among the few African countries that has an envoy from the UK. How strategic is Ghana for the UK? I think Ghana is hugely strategic for the UK. They have already, well, we have already sent over the foreign minister. The African minister has visited twice, including going to the new president of Ghana's inauguration. The deputy prime minister has come, and now I'm here, and I'm here frequently, as you heard, my family are from Ghana. But some of the trade envoys that we have multiple countries to deal with, whereas Ghana has only been given one trade envoy. So Ghana gets my entire focus. Interesting. But some have argued that, for instance, Ghana's trade with the UK is really being raw materials and it's not really having much impact on the economy locally. Has the UK's posturing towards this changed in any way, or are you looking at any progressive approach to the trade that you do with Ghana? Well, as somebody of Ghanaian heritage of myself, I do want to see both countries grow. And both governments say they have a focus on growth at the moment. So actually, there are many, many ways in which things could be beneficial to both of us. I think quite specifically of cocoa. And yes, I know we're talking about a raw product here, but it is one of Ghana's largest exports. At the moment, 95% of the Ghanaian cocoa that is being used in UK chocolate doesn't come directly from Ghana. Only 5% does. Whoever the middleman is, be it Europe or whoever, this is not a good deal for either Ghanaians or the UK, because it means the UK is paying too much and Ghanaians are getting paid too little. So we need to look at ways around that. Also, when I think about it, we are in the same time zone. We are only 6 hours apart. There are so many different things we could do. I'm going to leave Ghana on Sunday evening. On that evening flight that many know so well. I will land in the morning. I will go and drop my bags at home, have a shower and go straight to Parliament. If I can do that, why can't a lot of agricultural products do that already packaged? And yeah, there are some companies that actually export fresh cut fruit.
So that was Bell Ribeiro Adi. She's the UK envoy to Ghana, telling us about the UK's post-trade with Ghana and how critical Ghana is to the UK as one of the few African countries that actually has an envoy in Ghana. We're bringing you that interview in subsequent editions, but that'll be all for today's edition of Business Focus here on TV3. For more business stories, please visit our website. It's 3news.com/business, and we'll bring you more business updates. Later on News 360, I will bring you more from the world of business. My name is Michael Obodu. Thank you for watching. As always, please stay safe and catch you next week.